Assalamu alaikum, Sister Manira.
Walaikum assalam. Alhamdulillah.
Hope you're
Are you
doing well.
same here? uh, doing okay, no complaints.
Very good. Good to hear that.
Yes. I copied that link, that YouTube link.
Oh, did
So
you? Okay, good. That's usually Adam comes on and I'll make him co-host and he will put that on.
mhm.
So we're going to give people a couple more minutes to see who drifts in. I might need your help.
Okay.
We'll probably go to maybe five after at the most, and then I will open with the dua.
Okay, so you want to play this video tonight?
I do want to play this video tonight.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
I can do that
I would
for you.
love to. Okay. Thank you very much.
I will just get in the host seat briefly and share my screen and
I
play that.
am making you co-host.
Okay. Low Country Alliance. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, brother Omar.
Walaikum assalam. How you?
I am doing well. I'm surprised that with all the work that you're doing on IWDM 50, getting all that stuff together, that you're here.
Yeah, I decided to listen in
Okay.
today. I got
Uh,
a little bit of time.
Fantastic. That was cute. Omar, your AI assistant just introduced itself to me.
Okay.
We'll give everybody one more minute and then we will open. I saw an interesting video yesterday of Imam W.D. Muhammad being interviewed in Saudi Arabia during, I guess, one of his, I don't know how many trips he made to Saudi Arabia, but one of his trips to Saudi Arabia. And I almost wanted to show that video tonight, but I think there must be a better quality video of that same visit. That one, the quality wasn't that great. It was interesting, just the quality wasn't what I would want it to be. So I'm hoping I can find another video of that interview, maybe an original or one that has been cleaned up a little bit. All right, so I am going to open with Al-Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Well, thanks everyone who's here and those who are coming. Blessings be upon you. And special thanks to Sister Manira Habil Umar, who is sitting in the co-producer's chair this evening. She is going to help get us started on the video that we're going to watch, and we really appreciate her help.
Demonstrate good governance and sound economic judgment, they thrive. It is, of course, oversimplistic to discuss Africa as a monolith. Yet some regions, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, continue to grapple with debt, poverty, and civil conflict. This is why the continent remains the most underdeveloped, leading to a brain drain of its most talented individuals to more prosperous nations. To what extent has the legacy of colonialism, in both its historical and contemporary forms, contributed to these challenges? And how do we evaluate its potential? And what about the Muslim population, which numbers around 430 million, almost half of the continent? Now, to help us untangle and demystify Africa, we are honored to have on the Thinking Muslim Professor Abdullah N.J., an assistant professor of economics at New York University Stern. He has written extensively about his home country, Senegal, and has recently published intriguing articles examining the Islamic concept of zakah and economic inequalities in the context of the Muslim world. Professor Abdullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to the Thinking Muslim.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Thank you for having me in beautiful London.
Jazakallah khair. Well, it's wonderful to have you with us. This is your first time in London, by the way.
This was my second time. I came way back when in my student years when I was in Paris as a student.
Yeah.
We came for the theater, and I came to Cambridge for some things like Model UN way
Yes.
back in the day.
Mashallah.
At the time, all I did was visit the Buckingham Palace. Today, I had a wonderful guide who showed me the economic history of London
Yes.
and all to see. So it's really a pleasure to be here.
So just for our viewers, your guide was Riaz.
Riaz, yes,
Thinking Muslim too.
Riaz
Inshallah. So
Hassan.
he showed you around the economic highlights of London.
Yes, I think he can put that into a product, the economic tour of London by Riaz.
What did you see? But coincidentally,
Yeah, so I took a picture with Jeremy Bentham,
Mashallah.
you know, the
At
father
UCL,
of
yes.
UCL. So he's the father of utilitarianism, which economists grapple with a lot,
Yes.
especially like people who work on issues around when you think of what is the best thing to do, what called normative questions. So when you work on issues around inequality, around public finance, Jeremy Bentham says we want to do what is best for the greater good.
Yes.
And he illustrated this fact by saying that at his death, in his will, he put that they should expose his body. So when you go to UCL, there you have the bones of Jeremy Bentham
Yes.
put in display. They put like a body around it with clothing and all that.
Yes.
So I had the chance to benefit from this utilitarian act of his.
Yes.
We saw also places where Karl Marx in the library worked to write his Das Kapital.
Yeah.
We saw John Maynard Keynes' old living quarters,
Yeah.
and many other sites really that gave me an overview of the history and economic history of this city.
That's really interesting. I mean, we're here today to talk about Africa, but in that context, many African students, especially from the elites, they come to London and to America, of course, to study economics from a very Western lens. So some of those great names, or those names that you mentioned, Bentham and Keynes and Marx, would of course be part of that curriculum. This may sound like a very I don't know, a rudimentary question, but to what extent do we need to move away from these Western figures of economics and think about different models and behaviors moving forward?
Yeah, economics is a very broad field, and it has been studied by many Western figures.
Yeah.
Now there has been a lot of a movement to understand developing economies as a laboratory where there are a lot of questions to answer, and because growth is very important. One of the reasons why I'm in this town as well is because of a conference that I co-organized on structural transformation and economic growth at Oxford.
Yeah.
And there has been some revolution since the 2000s, of a credible revolution to think of how we use methods from medicine to go and study economics in the developing world. This is done by Westerners, Africans alike. Now it is growing, and there have been Nobel Prizes that have been awarded for development economics. And development economics, the idea really is not just to transpose theories, thinking from here, but really look at the challenges, the frictions, and the issues in Africa, in the developing world, and study those and really propose solutions that are adapted to those countries. And this research is done equally in collaboration, both by Africans and non-Africans. Africans with their training in economics, but also their institutional knowledge as well.
Fantastic. I mean, I said in my introduction that we hope to shed a light or draw some attention to Africa today. And of course, it is quite depressing, and maybe I will fall into this trap here today, but it's quite depressing that we lump all African countries, the diversity of African countries into one monolith. But to contradict myself, like paint me a picture of the economics of the continent. Like, how do you assess where Africa is in terms of development today?
Yeah, like you said, Africa is not a monolith, so there would be a lot of places we can go when we think of Africa. The economies are diverse. You have some economies that, like Nigeria and Angola, that rely mostly on petroleum exports, while some other economies like Kenya or Ethiopia will focus more on agriculture. Okay, and you have some other economies that rely more on tourism. Some other economies will try to do a mix of all of these. In terms of where we are, I think most of the growth that has happened, there have been sustained growth after the independence, have been driven mostly by commodities. And these have been low value add growth, mostly minerals, okay, that are exported. And some of the challenges has been that the infrastructure in place has been mostly infrastructure that is there to essentially carry these extracted minerals overseas, mostly to Europe. And there are other challenges related to skills, education, and human capital overall, which is the potential for people to produce goods and services. And these are related to these institutional factors that I started alluding to. And so there are still challenges that are associated with that, broken borders as well, that create instabilities in certain areas. Now, the challenges in West Africa are different. You have the relationship to manage with France and some colonial powers. In East Africa, you have some of the challenges related to Sudan, conflict. In Central Africa, you have the Congo. In South Africa, you have issues around unemployment. It's in South Africa, and North Africa as well is dealing with its own challenges. So overall, this is the continent where growth is going to happen in the future. It's a very young continent as well. So there are a lot of questions to resolve, but also a lot of good developments that have happened in 2024 and over this the previous this century as well.
when we talk about, you gave us a really clear picture of the different challenges and the different regions and countries within Africa. I mean, if there was one country you could cite
Yeah.
where economically things
Yeah.
are going well,
Yeah.
where would that be?
So I think so. Benin is a good example
Ah.
of a country that has potential.
Yeah.
And Senegal as well, where I'm from. So I want to give an example. So Benin has done a lot of reforms to have investment to take off, and also has the proximity with Nigeria. Nigeria is the largest economy in Africa, and also they also benefit implicitly from the fact that the Nigerian government subsidize energy, oil, and they are close to Nigeria, so they benefit from it.
Yeah.
But if I want to give just the whole picture, the example I'm going to give of what shows the good things and the challenges in Africa is actually from where I grew up. So it's a neighborhood in Dakar, the capital of Senegal, Keur Massar. So I grew up in Keur Massar. We moved to Keur Massar, and this was because I want to talk about the story of cities in Africa, because it's good to update people's image of Africa. For some people's image of Africa is the malnourished child, but you want you to think of Keur Massar as a prototype of some annexed part, connected part to a part connected to a city or a city in Africa.
Yes.
So we moved there. It started not many people living there. Good quality of air, good quality of life. We moved there away from the more dense suburbs. Keur Massar had one industry, company that was producing poultry. Over time, people moved to Keur Massar, more people moved to Keur Massar, it became a larger city. And one of the challenges that, and the city started growing, some low to middle income people were living there. Then there was flooding happening all around Senegal. And these are some of the issues both related to urban planning, okay, in cities without strong urban planning, but also related to climate change. So there were more people who moved to Keur Massar, but also it started being more dense and congested. So you have cities that are dense and congested. And in these cities that are dense and congested, you have a lot of economic activity now in Keur Massar. There is a big market. So you have a lot of informal activity happening, right? So this is without formal accounting procedures.
Yes.
This economic activity is very dynamic. 50% of GDP in Senegal is in this informal sector. Now, this economic activity also, in terms of how it organized, has some drawbacks, right? So these are small-scale businesses. So the medium and small enterprises, some of them fail. It's hard for them to get financing and to scale up, to go from the table in the market to the store to a supermarket. So you mostly have small stores. And as well, what came with this congestion as well is that that main industry, the Sedima, had to move to another place. Okay, so pollution being also one challenge as well. Okay, as this in this example, representing also that you have cities that can be very polluted. One other point in this particular Keur Massar, why I mention it also, when we think of Africa often, the element of security comes into play. So that's where the Dakar race, the big trucks that used to go from Paris all the way to Dakar, passing through the Sahara, used to arrive near Lake Redba, near Keur Massar.
Yes.
And that's a beautiful pink lake. It's really beautiful to see. So when I was a kid, we used to go and watch these giant trucks and motorcycles and SUVs crossing all the desert and arriving there. That beautiful race has moved to South America at some point, in the UAE, and then it stopped, I think, and mainly because of terrorism and instability in Libya, in all the Sahara as well. So it's also a microcosm, an example of the issues that happened around Senegal and in Africa as well, of sometimes conflict and instability. And it's a city now that has become, Kermassa, one of the largest cities with a lot of youth unemployment as well. Okay, so a lot of potential, like I say, a lot of young people, a lot of energy and dynamism. Okay, but a city that has a lot of challenges, and that's an example for me of the updated view of Africa for people.
Thank you very much. That's a very evocative picture you paint of your home city. You talked there about one of the benefits of Kirimasai is a young demographic.
Yeah.
Now, we often associate Africa to be overpopulated, you know, and that's a very crude way of putting it. And many Western economists argue that as you urbanize and as you modernize, your population will slow down and your younger population will slow down. And so in our minds, at least in the West, we associate countries in Africa that have large burgeoning populations to be somewhat of a curse, in inverted commas. Is that how you see it when it comes to Africa?
Yeah, not at all. I think it's actually there are challenges associated with finding jobs for the youth.
Yeah.
But it's more short term.
Right.
I think the challenge really is how to harness this potential.
Yeah.
Currently, 75% of Africans are less than 35-year-old.
Right.
And Africa is supposed to be the labor force of the future.
Yeah.
And now the question is, how can it attract clientele from around the world where it could allow to earn higher wages? Now, that I think is the way to answer the question. I think the examples of countries like India are pretty useful for many African countries, which is how to develop an IT industry that is strong enough, broadband, accessible all around, so that we can develop services that can be useful for the world. Now, these services, like in the example of call centers and other IT services as well, and increase also the educated population that can do these jobs as well. Yeah. The reason why I mention is we need industries as well. Those are important. But when you look at service, on the service part, this is a place where we can do a lot. And we already have mobile phones. So Africa leapfrogged from going from the phone lines, not to the computer, directly to the mobile phones. Yeah. People use mobile money. More than 35% of mobile money users say they use it also for saving, right? So the question is, how do you have internet accessibility all around so that people can do productive activities from their phones as well? So I think really this notion of productivity, pushing it, can be beneficial for the youth and can be beneficial for population at all. So I don't think that there is any policy whatsoever that needs to be done in terms of controlling population. China has a very large population, and China has found ways to grow in it. Certainly, with manufacturing helping a lot, Africa needs manufacturing. There are challenges. We can talk about it, but that's I think it's more of an opportunity than a challenge.
Yeah. And how real is the brain drain in countries like Senegal or Nigeria, where talented individuals, people who've acquired those skill sets that are very much in demand in say, Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
How much does that account for the loss to the continent?
Yeah, so the brain drain is real and it's substantive. The way I want to think of the brain drain is you do not need to support a country or your country or to help or work for your country. You can contribute to your country's production. You can contribute to your country, not only through your own labor, but through adding more capital to your country. And one way is investing. Yeah. There are a lot of remittances coming from the West to more developed countries, to Africa. However, these remittances, they often come to supplant some basic social services that government should provide. Yes. So this is what is called usually the family tax. Okay, it is that these remittances often they are there because there is a lack, for example, of coverage of health insurance. So they are there to cover health issues, health bills. That's often. And so I think really we should think of how also the diaspora, African diaspora, can benefit also in investments. Now, we know in investments in particular, there are investments happening, mostly in many parts. So for example, in Senegal part is in real estate. And this is related to challenges for businesses to operate. For small and medium enterprises, they really need this financing. And this financing is limited because of issues that are specific sometimes. They are to the developing context or more acute, the developing context is like in this informal activity that I mentioned, when companies do not have clear financial statements at the end of the year that you can read, like that you have in the West, then you need to deal with assessing whether the company you are investing in will be someone who will be trustworthy and whether when they operate, they will deliver. Right. If you have a partnership that is based on equity, meaning that you are sharing the profits and losses, yes, which is kind of the Islamic model of thinking of how we do partnership in business. So that's what limits these investments as well. Venture capital can go around this because they don't invest in the very small and medium enterprises. They at a larger scale. So they will go on dinners and have conversations with founders and assess and use some credentials to judge. But that's not something that is scalable because you cannot go and have a dinner and a conversation with every farmer, but also you don't have a registry that told you how well they performed if they had loans in the past. Yeah. So these are challenges that are really with economic challenges. These are some things we really understand in economics. The problem, what we call adverse selection, which is to select the person, you don't know whether this will be a person who has a good project that you can that they will work on. Yeah. And the other problem that even after investing in this person, because you don't have formal records, you are not certain that this is how much they produce. If you invest in a farmer, if they take a part of the production, there is no way for you to verify. So now these are what economists call often frictions, challenges that do not allow the seamless trading and investments happening. And these are places where governments can operate to think of really how to reduce these barriers, and that can drive investment and also productivity of firms. So to come back to the question of the brain drain, I think there can be some technology transfer coming from the diaspora who learn other methods of doing. There have been a lot of evidence that both the diaspora is beneficial to their host countries. So in America, for example, we find inventors, immigrants contribute a lot to innovation. Similarly as well, the diaspora contributes with new ideas, because ideas are important in a society. With new ideas, with different ways of doing things, and bringing also some of the standards as well in terms of production from the West. And they can benefit as well. They can be useful by tailoring their investments beyond real estate to look at the issues of to solve the issue of investing in medium and small enterprises.
Okay, so the context of this conversation today is, the live reality of Africa, and of course the context is that Africa has embraced or been asked to embrace many of the sort of the basic precepts of free market capitalism. In fact, just today we were discussing off camera. The Economist has a front page that Africa needs capitalism. Like from your perspective as an economist, yes, does Africa need more capitalism, or does it need to? Because for some of what you've just suggested there, in terms of like refinement of bureaucracies and refinement of economic activities. I mean, that sounds very much within sort of that capitalism framework. So how do you, like, what's your view about more capitalism in Africa?
Yeah, so I think the term capitalism is often loaded. So I will rephrase things and make a statement related to that. I think Africa needs more growth today, more sustainable growth and structural transformation of the way in which we produce things. Because one thing that is very important for a country to develop is how much you can produce from the same amount of labor, the same number of people working the same hours, or the same amount of machines, capital, right? So that is productivity, right? We need to first increase productivity, right? And there are the ways in which you increase this productivity have nothing to do with capitalism per se. This is about educating people better. This is about all the barriers that can make production of the same number of machines or the same number of hours larger, right? So it
frictions,
frictions, exactly, right? So those are frictions now. But I think thinking of capitalism as essentially just thinking of looking at the role of capital in the economy, expanding that, and also really emphasizing on that part alone at the detriment of having a healthy society, and educated youth, is not what I see as beneficial to Africa. So in a sense, when we mention capitalism, there are a lot of common sense things you want to do to reduce those frictions, to me, that are not inherently bad things about capitalism. But a society that emphasizes on mass production, right, which is producing more, but I'm really emphasizing more on producing more of the same things rather than just producing more for its own sake.
If we take one very important aspect of capitalism is a free market economy. And I suppose the principle there is that internally the economy should be run as frictionless as possible, but also there should be very few barriers to trade in terms of external trade and foreign direct investments. And now, you know, I suppose when the West talk about capitalism, they're probably maybe referring to this aspect of opening up countries and making sure countries are not do not have protections to trade. Now, you know, the left would argue that that leads to a decline of homegrown industries, and it leads to. I remember reading many years ago, you know, in Cameroon, to purchase milk from a local farmer is far more expensive than to get milk powder that's imported in from Germany. So just, you know, focusing on that free market aspect, if you can, you know, are there any negatives to embracing that part of capitalism?
So to answer this in the context of, let's say, sub-Saharan African countries, I think I need to go into a little bit of history,
please,
of how the economies came to be around, because that is important. I think in many African countries in the post-colonial time, the economy was mostly extractive. So the Nobel Prize winners of this year they were awarded for thinking of the institutions that were created by that were settled colonialism when they settled. Places where Europeans could settle ended up to be more developed because they built institutions that were more lasting. While where they couldn't settle because mortality was difficult, they mostly extracted the resources and left. And if you look at many places in Africa, that's where those extractive institutions that remained. Now, I prefer the better word. Instead of extractive, that sounds like this is just an adjective, but extraction happened. So this was an active act of extraction that happened. And when European countries extracted resources, they didn't build the infrastructure in place for trade to happen within. They mostly built ports and ways to disseminate from the train to the port and to the boat to Europe.
Yes.
right? Now, why is this relevant? These institutions, they are persistent, so they stay over time, even if, like you see, for example, in Italy, if you go to Florence, the same families that in the 1400s that were the richest are still now the richest.
Right.
And so this time is not that far off. We are 60, 70 years from that. Now, this persists now.
Really?
This institutional reality is a reality in Africa.
Yeah.
So now when you look at then trade within Africa is very low. And this is one reason as well. We don't have the infrastructure necessary to do this value-added creation in our own goods and services we produce beyond minerals, adding them, refining them, and trading between us within Africa. So trade with Europe, with China is much stronger.
Yes.
Now, facing this reality now, let's answer your question now. So what should we do? Should we liberalize trade altogether?
Yes.
Right? And should we have some protections? Right? I want to examine this in the light of the institutional factors I mentioned, and another point which will come next, which is on the geopolitical reality of our time now.
Yeah.
So first, in light of the institutions. So what happens actually, you see, African countries are mostly importers, right? So they export raw materials and they import final goods from, they import milk that is processed from overseas. And overall, so they are not competitive with other countries.
Yeah.
And I think here there is an argument for doing what is called industrial policy. So industrial policy is looking at the reality where we are now. We can follow and produce those goods in which we are the best at relatively. Yeah. So that's where what we say we have comparative advantage.
This is Ricardo's idea.
Yes.
I remember from my undergraduate days.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you focus on producing,
Yes.
Wheat and other producing cloth.
Yes.
However, there can be sometimes even some impediment to be because of the bad infrastructure in place, low productivity in agriculture and so on. So there is room there to decide, okay, I want to invest in strengthening the agriculture industry and looking at, for example, cacao in Côte d'Ivoire, which has been their staple, where they have been exporting it, and say, okay, let me subsidize so that they can refine it to add value, or let me subsidize exporting it. So they are interventions of the government. So they are not, in a sense, capitalist policies, right? But they can be useful, I think, for Africa. So industrial policy targeting industries rather than just individual firms, because if you target individual firms, often you create winners and losers within firms, and it can create this cronyism with these sometimes weak institutions.
Yeah.
Right? And now, so on the point now you mentioned, right, is you can have milk being imported in Cameroon while they just sell the raw milk directly.
Yes.
In Senegal is an example where you see also a lot of, even on the stalls in the streets, you see imported goods. Okay, so I think there is room there to do industrial policy to limit these. Now, it's going to be true that really the reality is productivity is low in agriculture. And so we need to think of how to make mechanics. Yes, right. The other point I wanted to mention as well is that the one of fragmentation, the world we live in now, which is if you look at trade, a lot of trade now is happening not just purely driven by this Ricardo idea, but also when people say like, oh, I'm going to trade with my friends and I'm not going to trade with my enemies. And this is something to keep in mind as well as we have a regime change in the US. Donald Trump is going to come, and Donald Trump said he's going to put 100% tariff on BRICS countries. Okay, so what is the response of these countries should be? I think there is room for them to prioritize trading among themselves and have trade agreements, strengthen trade agreements. Okay, but there are challenges with the trade agreements within. And for example, if we take the case of West African countries, you have ECOWAS, which is our economic and trade agreement.
Yes.
The difficulty is there have been some countries that are under military rule now, and they've decided to create the Sahel States group. And the Sahel States group see the ECOWAS as more of a institution that is under the French control, and they want to exit this agreement. And their notice it's going to be a year soon that this will be in place. Then there are challenges related to how they will navigate strengthening this ECOWAS or having splintered groups when it comes to trade. So intra-Africa trade really is a key element that needs to be strengthened, and that in response to the other geopolitical realities out there, we need to think of carefully how to develop it between Africans. There are different groups. You have Eastern group have their trade agreements, Southern group, Northern African group, and Central African and West African groups having different trade agreements.
Yes.
And really
They need to come
strengthening,
together.
under the African Union umbrella, but the African Union has not been as effective in this. There is the African ZLECAf in French, African Free Trade area that is put in place as well, but this hasn't been as effective into getting trade to expand.
So can I pick up on that point about African trade? Because I've always wondered whether the European Union is a fantastic project, but just in the wrong continent, the wrong place, because these nation states are very consolidated, and the divisions between European states, as we can see today, are becoming far more pronounced. Whereas when we consider Africa, I mean, these are post-colonial constructs. In many ways, cultures and peoples do not confine themselves to the nation-state boundaries as much as maybe some European countries. You know, these divisions are not as pronounced in Africa, even though sometimes leaders come along who try to carve out those divisions. Like, how valuable would be like a European Union, full integration? We're talking economic and political union with free trade and with free movement of people with a single currency. Like, how realistic, but also how valuable would such an organization be for Africa as a continent?
I think it would be very valuable. One of the strengths of Nigeria is that it's a federation of 200 million people.
Wow,
and when businesses start in Nigeria, they have access to a large market. So if you look at all the billionaires almost from Africa, it's the same blueprint. Most of them are from Nigeria, and they work in staples that feed millions of people, and they have large market access.
Wow.
Right? Now, how do you, on the issue of peoples in Africa and the barriers? Like, you know, after colonization, there was a divide and conquer mindset that happened that led to division on a map of different countries in Africa. These divisions often do not map to ethnicities and language groups in the continent. One example is the Fulani tribe, which you can see all the way from Senegal all the way to Niger and so on. So the whole Sahel region.
Yes.
And they are in different countries. There are a few variations in their language, but it's the same culture. And they can be Nigerian, they can be Cameroonian, they can be Ghanaian, they can be Senegalese, they can be Guinean, they can be Malian, they can be Mauritanian. Okay. So this tells us that maybe also we need to go beyond the colonial barriers. Now, there is a lot of, I think, cheap talk around this. And the difficulty has always been whenever there are initiatives around this, either they are too simplistic and utopic,
Yes.
or they have been nipped in the bud uh, due to geopolitical tensions and other countries meddling in the projects.
Are we
So-
talking principally
Yes.
Western countries here?
Yes, so we're talking about Western countries. So, for example, Libya, Muammar Gaddafi was a large proponent of the African Union. He really wanted and had a message of African unity. Many people have been killed as well, pushing for African unity. Cheikh Anta Diop was a scientist from Senegal, known for his work on Egypt and thinking of African origin of humanity, which is now and has been established as evidence, even though some of his work has been criticized for good reason, but he did some work, but at the time it wasn't popular.
Yeah.
We have had thinkers like Kwame Nkrumah giving a Pan-African message.
Yeah.
People like Thomas Sankara, who was killed by his friend, who many suspect that was working with France. And Thomas Sankara had the Pan-African view, but had a view that it was through the military that the society would be somewhat educated and disciplined to go beyond the loss in human capital that came from colonization, right?
Yes.
And so we had Patrice Lumumba as well. All of these people who have faced difficulty went to jail, some of them killed.
Yes.
And then you had next generation coming, the remaining, which were mostly the neo-colonial elite who didn't care much about their people, who were mostly put there because they were there ready to accept what the West imposed on them. Now, to have this unity, we need to be realistic that we need to start from our own common zones, right? Strengthen them, use a language. The language in our time, the lingua franca, the language that all uses is not Latin, is not Arabic anymore, it's English. So we need to organize ourselves around English. We need to strengthen our common currencies and maybe go beyond that to have a common currency. I think, though, those are things that can be done from the policy perspective, because, you know, if you ask, can an African government develop their country? Certainly, it's not up to them, because I believe it's firms that develop a country, and it's firms that operate, that provide jobs.
Yes.
But can they use their energy to sit at a table, have conversations, strengthen trade agreements, and break barriers among themselves? Again, so these breaking barriers, certainly you can categorize them as capitalism, and maybe these are good parts of capitalism within themselves to strengthen inter-Africa trade, add value to their goods, okay? And the cacao from Ivory Coast being transformed into coffee to be sent and sold in Senegal, instead of Senegal buying the Nescafe from overseas or produced overseas from those cacao beans. So then, after developing these regions and strengthening the Africa Free Trade Agreement we currently have and free trade zone that is on paper, we can then look at the question of the common currency. I do not see any reason why this cannot be a reality. The world moves very quickly, and as we have seen with COVID, things can happen with being unexpected. With AI, things are going to move very quickly. So I think we need more discussion of trade and investment among African countries, and that's a priority in my view.
And do you feel there is an appetite for that within the continent? I mean, I sometimes get the impression that even the West may find it very difficult or not want to transform these extractive economies because it doesn't serve their interests. France wouldn't want that, and America wouldn't want that. But at the same time, you do see some inertia from African rulers, African leaders who are who do not like the idea of giving up control over their nation state to, what would essentially be supranational bodies.
The tricky part in this conversation is some countries are facing challenges on many dimensions. We know in Sudan there is a war. In Congo there's conflict related to minerals, and so they might not even have the bandwidth to have the diplomatic personnel to undertake this. There is also the division, even in West Africa, between ECOWAS countries and the Alliance of Sahel countries, which are which are under military rule.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky situation. Right. Now, the way I think this can be addressed start with the relationship that these countries have with foreign powers, with France, with the US, with England, with Russia as well, because some of these military-led countries, they took out the French flag and replaced it with a Russian flag.
Yeah.
So what do I mean by that? The discussions around aid should turn to discussions around investment and trade. I think a lot of the limitations that you have between these countries uniting is that some of the countries will think, this has been, for example, in the West African sense, when you talk about having a common currency between the countries that are using currently the franc CFA, which is this franc that was the colonial franc, whose name was turned into a sort of a Rosetta Stone that we saw today, like a dictionary inversion. It turns from the franc of the French colonies of Africa to the franc of the financial community of Africa. So just a little word twist.
Yes.
So these countries have been trying to connect with Nigeria and have potentially a common currency called the ECO. Okay. Now, the difficulty has been Nigeria thinking that, we don't want France to be the supervisor of our currency. Because essentially these countries have a fixed peg with the euro because this was guaranteed by the central bank in France.
Yeah.
Now the arrangements have changed on paper, but this has been what has historically been the case. So this is an example so Nigeria thinking, France these are essentially under French rule, and those countries also thinking, Nigeria is a big bloc.
Yes.
They rely a lot on oil. We already seen how the exchange rate has depreciated a lot.
Yeah.
And these countries are like, okay, this is a risk for us. So how do we navigate this?
Yeah.
In the end, I think these countries, instead of making a choice, this can be sometimes drastic or painful, and see whether the political reality can be accepted.
Yes.
To say, okay, maybe we want to get rid of the colonial aspects of this currency. We want to think of now from a first principle, given where we are, if we were to keep a common currency, how would it look like? Would it be a flexible exchange rate regime like Nigeria, where it moves around depending on our commodities? Or do we keep it fixed with the euro or with the dollar? Or how do we integrate it together?
Yeah.
And I think by switching their discussion, their relationship with Europe and the US away from aid to away from also political influence and diplomatic influence at the UN. We've seen aid being correlated a lot with votes at the UN.
Yeah.
To one of just trade and investment, then they can be credible that they are free of these countries. And this is a movement that is happening somewhat in what is called the France-Afrique, this part of Africa that has been under French influence. And that from this next step, the next step will be a discussion, a strengthening really of trade between these countries. And beyond that, they can see what the next steps will be.
Can I ask you about two particular countries? And I know, your expertise cannot range from, you wouldn't have expertise of each and every single country intimately in Africa, but it's something which bothers me. I mean, Congo is an interesting example.
Yes.
As you said in your answer there, Congo has internally it has a problem, but also Congo is rich in natural resources, cobalt, I think, which is
Yes.
extremely
Diamonds,
important. Diamonds.
coltan.
So the first question really is about Congo. Like, what is it that prevents Congo, which has such gifted, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gifted it with such tremendous resources? Why is it that Congo is, if not the poorest, one of the poorest countries in Africa? And the second point is about Nigeria, which is, I think you suggested or intimated it earlier on, but Nigeria should be and is the powerhouse of Africa. It's an extremely diverse country, but also a country which has resources and potential and a young population. Yet that there doesn't seem to be, using the capitalist term, a trickle down where the petroleum revenue actually, and its impact doesn't seem to be trickling down to the population. So just take me through the Congo example, which is a very poor country, and Nigeria, which is far more affluent country, but some of the inherent structural problems in those two countries.
So the Congo example is it's a country that is very rich in minerals, so has cobalt, diamonds, copper.
Yeah.
But the country has been plagued by conflict.
Yeah.
And this has been the remnants of colonization, and you had decades of dictatorship. One example is Mobutu, who had been there for a long time, and with the weak institutions that came out from the colonial period as well,
Right.
these elites mostly captured the resources from the proceeds of these minerals and park them into tax havens around the world, in the Western world, that are also complicit of this, and really didn't provide any public goods for their people. And so what that led is a resource curse, right? That, because of these minerals can be captured very easily, they only value is being extracted. They are not creating, because to extract minerals, you don't need even a bachelor's degree. Right. So you need to create those other jobs. You need to use those resources, the revenues, to create schools, to hospitals, and educate the people so they can do the other jobs and transform, right? The difference between Gulf countries that they have been doing this diversification to transform their economies, and so people can be educated and so on. So this is the issue with, I'm not saying that these Gulf countries are examples in a way, but I want to just give that their resources have been more smoothly managed in that regard. Yeah. And so that's really the challenge with Congo. And there are various militia and armed factions which exploit the mineral resources to fund their operations. Yeah. And it's really kind of a Wild West where people are fighting for these resources. And the multinational corporations that on top they mostly extract resources and do not provide the safety and provide the public goods necessary for this. That's kind of the overall big picture case in the Congo. Nigeria is somewhat of a different situation, because if you look at, for example, Nigeria right now doesn't even have foreign military presence. Nigeria has been plagued by military coups and wars at the time of this South wanting to secede. But since the 2000s, Nigeria has been stable in that sense and has had politically a federation where you have a lot of different stakeholders that kind of keep a political equilibrium that is somewhat stable, even though you have sometimes some conflict arising. But overall, Nigeria has some advantages, but has been struggling lately. The advantage Nigeria had is, since they faced after this time of instability, they had some sort of agreement that all factions are somewhat okay, Most of the oil is in the south, but there is some transfer of resources to the north. The south is very productive, Lagos, but they got to that point where they can actually go beyond just minerals and oil. In that, in Lagos, you have a lot of companies. Most of the, in fintech, for example, most of the unicorns come from there. And once you start seeing companies in Africa solving the problems of the people themselves, then you see the window of growth opening up. Yeah. Because if it's just minerals, then we are still in the extractive phase and we are not going to go beyond it. And this can be trapped under resource curse. So Nigeria, by having companies doing different things, by having people working also in the services sector for the world in general, it has good trajectory. Now, especially since under the previous administration, the Buhari administration, there have been a lot of bad choices that were made around trying to artificially keep exchange rate guided, despite the realities that were different. So you had an exchange rate of the currency, the Naira, in the black market that was very different from the official one. And so actually, in fact, the governor of the central bank has had legal issues because of corruption around this arbitraging the currency. So that led to, after they got rid of these guided exchange rate artificially guided to be fixed, and also lifting some of the subsidies that they were doing for fuel, that the currency depreciated a lot. So now that means that you will have less US dollars for the same amount of Nairas. Yeah. And so that's a very tough period. That's what they are facing currently. Yeah. But I really can see also a recovery happening for Nigeria, in that once they manage these issues around the exchange rate, they've had a lot of multinationals leaving as a result, and other companies leaving, because their revenue from operating in Nigeria, just once they repatriate it, is not that large because of this 70% drop in the value of their currency, which is pretty drastic. But that was the reality that they should have faced. But moving forward, the fact that they face their own challenges, it's rough in Nigeria. I go to Nigeria often, and Nigeria doesn't have provided, if you live there, you need to provide water for your home. Electricity often goes off, and it's on a managed schedule of disruptions. Yeah. You also need to manage your own security. But because there is what I call a creative disruption. So economists have this notion of creative destruction, which is that in an economy, sometimes you need new firms coming in and they will topple the old firms. The typical examples is when we talk about the modern cameras, digital cameras, and Kodak not embracing them, and then they topple those, and that's how innovation happens. So this is the idea of creative destruction of Schumpeter. Like, I think similarly for states, there is a creative disruption that needs to happen, and I think this creative disruption might have happened for Nigeria already. For the France-Afrique countries, for the Francophone countries, it hasn't happened yet. So if you go to Dakar GDP is 40% lower than Nigeria, Senegal's GDP. But you feel like quality of life is much better. Right. You have resorts, electricity all around, internet, water, everything is running. Yeah. But it's all because these are managed by mostly foreign companies. Okay? So we haven't built the national security resources to make these as local companies. Right. Okay? And that is important because in Senegal, that is also relatively the case in Côte d'Ivoire as well. Even though Côte d'Ivoire has built more infrastructure than Senegal,
Yeah.
and has advanced much more on this dimension.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think so. The issue why I'm mentioning the example of Nigeria here is, I think despite the challenges they are facing their own problems
Yeah.
through this creative disruption that already occurred for them.
Yeah.
And now, by having more and more companies there who are solving the problems, really that's what tells you, oh, okay, there is an economy beyond just minerals here. We can add value to things, and then that will push other companies, foreign companies, to come and also solve the people's problems.
Yeah.
Okay, that beyond just extraction, right? So yeah, I think those are some examples.
Yeah.
They are not the example that are most talked about. Nigeria, many commentators would not give you Nigeria as the main, but I think really being such a large country, with such a large market, it can drive a lot of Africa, and it has a lot of the large youth in Africa as well, and it has a lot of innovations in financial technologies and so on with its challenges. Yeah.
You paint a really interesting picture between the quality of life in Senegal, which is
Yes.
relatively speaking, a poorer country, to
Yeah.
that of Nigeria, which has load shedding, electricity problems, security issues,
Yeah.
and there are all sorts of frictions
Yeah.
to ordinary business and ordinary life. Now, I wonder how much that's down to the adoption of what would be termed orthodox, let's not call it capitalist, but orthodox economic policies. I mean, I remember a while back reading, I think it was Dambiso Moyo, who's a developmental economist, I
Yes.
think, from Nigeria, who argued that, in a sense, these orthodox policies are not fit in an African context. And maybe Senegal, even if it hasn't, its economy is not growing. So I suppose, this is an anti-growthism argument. Its economy isn't growing. The quality of life of Senegalese is far better, and maybe that's what we want. We want to live. Sorry to sound philosophical here, but we want to live happy lives.
I want to qualify when I say quality of life in Dakar,
Yes.
I think, but there are many rural parts in Senegal, quality life is not as good. I think I compared more broadly also because Nigeria has one limitation that it has is the state provides much less services,
Right.
welfare state. And I think the welfare state is important.
Yes.
Health, protection, education, right? It's really to each their own, right? Very low, one of the lowest in the world.
Really?
Okay? Yes.
In Nigeria.
In Nigeria, yes. And but you have also a lot of inequalities as well. Okay, even So but what I mentioned in Dakar in particular, Dakar is a very small, tiny part of Senegal, yet it's the capital.
Yeah.
Right. Everything is concentrated there. I wanted to give it as a stark difference because it's a kind of like a town where you have a lot of foreigners. There's that this quality of life is maintained mostly because you have the businesses, the large corporations are mostly foreign owned.
Yes.
Okay. And you have as well this band-aid of protection of these business interests by foreign governments.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have any of that in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And so the creative disruption is in the sense that you need protection when this is more extraction. So and this is where I want to come to the recent Macron statements. So
Yes.
Emmanuel Macron, the French president, who said that Africans should be thankful. And I think he should call more for a message of mutual respect than a paternalistic call for being thankful.
Yeah. To France.
To France, yes. Africans should be thankful to France. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any state if it were not for French troops.
Yeah.
So I think there is room for defending an industry when this industry is extracting, right? You keep the militia, you keep some sort of protection for extracting industries.
Right.
But when there is not this extraction happening, then you are just solving problems.
Yes.
So this is exchange that is coming out of mutual respect and mutual gains.
Yes.
In that moment, you don't need any more military bases. Okay? And that is why I'm juxtaposing and comparing the Senegal case here with the
Yes.
Nigerian case.
Yes.
In the sense that, so the band-aid that is in this case is that one where everything works. You have electricity, you have water, but productivity is very low, and GDP per capita is much lower than in the Nigerian case where it's chaos.
So to pick up on that orthodoxy point, I mean,
Yes.
so maybe Senegal isn't
Yeah.
the example, but I don't know, Mauritania, or
Yeah.
there may be another example of a happy place which hasn't urbanized and hasn't industrialized
Yeah.
and it isn't obsessed about productivity and growth. Yet it's not mired with security problems and electricity problems and crime and the rest of it. Like, is that even a conversation to be had in Africa?
Because you started mentioning this, mentioning Dambisa Mayo's book,
Yes.
Dead Aid.
Yes.
Right.
That's it.
And her argument has a flavor of what I'm talking about
Yeah.
here, because her point is that aid sometimes disrupts the local industries themselves. You have aid dependencies, and this is a reality, yes.
Yes.
The aid becomes an industry. Like there is a joke, like when aid comes, you have the SUV that comes with the Westerner in the village, and then at the end, the Westerner leaves, the SUV stays for the program manager of that aid project domestically. And the village stays as well, So that's the joke. Yeah. So I think aid can be disruptive. That's why we need to move from aid to talking about trade and investment.
Right.
Now, on the issue of should we not grow, and for me, I'm very clear on that. I'm not a degrowth person. I think growth is very important, and African countries need to grow because, first of all, their population grow. Yeah. So you need to grow to at least feed your population, your growing population. So that, in that sense, these measures that we often talk about, like GDP, gross domestic product, which measures the production within a country in a given year of goods and services, at least need to grow at the rate in which the population is growing, right? So that you can feed more mouths. And then it needs to grow beyond to also that people's incomes can rise, right? So living standards can rise, people can be healthier, so that also you can repay the debt that many of the countries are mired into. So I wouldn't say that there are degrowth stories or there should be degrowth stories in Africa. Right. I think we cannot get around the fact that we need to grow the pie. Now I think there is a lot of sensibilities for many people, and also as Muslims, understanding that our life is not just a material life, but also a spiritual one. And from my Senegal, where I'm from, is a great example of that. It's what I would call the world capital of Sufism. Yes. And it's a pleasure to see how this is also nurtured and cherished as well. And that's part of our things that that people value, that adds to the quality of life as well.
We haven't spoken yet about China and China's role in the continent, because of course, in terms of trade now, I think China has a greater share of trade with individual African countries than European and American companies, and so the Chinese are very central to the economic story of Africa, and the common wisdom, or at least that which is disseminated by the Chinese and the supporters of the Chinese, is that China does not come into Africa with that exploitative underbelly that many Western companies have, and China does not require the thick values of liberalism and human rights in order to do trade. And in a sense, when Chinese companies do access resources, there is a more delicate footprint, I suppose, of those companies. So how do you rate China versus European and maybe even Russian and American companies in terms of Africa?
I think so. It is different in form, but not in China is different in form, but not in terms of outcomes. I think they get paid in a different way. All right. So European and American companies, or the European countries as well, get paid in the form of like their extra resources as well. China gets paid in terms of geopolitical power. So many of China's investment, so they have done a lot of infrastructure funding. They built the Addis Ababa Djibouti railway, and they often will have a clause that allows them to seize some asset.
Really?
Angola exchanged oil for roads, hospitals, and housing built by China, and they will be able to collect some asset on the other side in case the country doesn't repay.
Right.
And also often we found there is some evidence as well in terms of voting at the UN as well, voting along the lines for China, for countries that received this Belt and Road Initiative from China. So I think they get paid in a different way, either in kind, in some sense. And so, but they give concessionary loans, lower rates to buy for this geopolitical power in the global scene. And the way I think about now, maybe what is the attitude of what should be the attitude of African countries, I don't see that African countries should try and say, hey, look, we are geopolitically strong, like in the way in which the US portrays, or China or Russia, but rather be more focused on economic outcomes, understand the fragmentation of the world, and make countries pay for and have a geopolitical competition around them, not limit themselves to one partner. And I think that's the message we keep. Many countries just limit themselves to their former colonial master, but now just say, okay, we are partners, we negotiate, we look at what China offers, we look at what Russia offers, we look at what the US offers. And I think this is important, and even for people who are also in Western institutions as well, to understand that we do things for humanity. We are not Western spoke people, but really we want to think of for African countries, what is in their best interest? It's not replacing a French flag with a Russian flag, but what does they provide conditions, each of them, that the US, to deal with the US, you will not deal with China. To deal with the US, you will not deal with Iran, or you will not deal with Russia. They believe that certain values are better than other values. Africans might have different values, and Africans even within themselves might be split on these values as well. So to each of them to look at the competition, the geopolitical competition, and not try to say, okay, I'm also geopolitically strong. Often what happens is that then you have a military invasion coming your way. Libya is one example.
Yes.
So I think it needs to be strategic, understand the reality, be realistic that, each of the countries are not on their own militarily strong, geopolitically strong, but they can have their sovereignty, not have colonial presence in terms of military, in a military form or monetary form, okay? Like having a monetary colonial money, and say now, okay, I'm ready to trade with everyone. I'm ready to also geopolitically have alliances, but I'm open to others as well. And let the competition in a fragmented world now but I think often sometimes some countries will do the mistake of kind of forcing some sort of alignment either through historical arguments, and often these are flawed. Africa has been, in many parts of Africa, colonized, been at war, and suppressed in the world stage.
Yeah.
So we should take this more as an opportunity to develop our economies and be pragmatic and strategic rather than just benevolent alignments.
In your answer there, you talked about values
Yes.
and the values of Africans. But of course,
Yeah.
As you said, you intimated Africa is a very diverse continent.
Yes.
Now, at the very beginning, in my introduction, I spoke of the 400 million Muslims
Yes.
in Africa. So that's
Yeah.
45% of Africa are actually
Yeah.
Muslims, which is an astonishing figure, really. How important are the values of Islam in the economic future and the economic story and the economic narrative of Africa?
A large population of Africa is Muslim. Like you said, if you look at the map of Africa, the Sahel is kind of somewhat of a delimitation of what used to be the limit to the north of the Sahel. You have Islam, and then now you have more and more Muslim, even in some parts of Central Africa, South Africa, the eastern part of Africa has large Muslim populations, and also northern part.
Yeah.
Now, the values of Islam really are present here and are important. And I think when I talked about financing medium and small enterprises, the idea is really to think of how to scale the arrangement that our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had with his wife Khadija, which is this profit and loss sharing agreements, which what Islamic finance is supposed to really put in place. So there is work that some economists are doing to address these issues I told you earlier of how to select projects, adverse selection, and how to avoid the challenges with not having good information on firms and so on. So I think these issues, right, how to scale medium and small enterprises can benefit a lot from what we learn in Islam, and take that as an opportunity to think of how can we have equity arrangements and develop them for these countries. So that's one thing. The other elements is that we can avoid, using Islamic principles, a lot of issues that plague the Western world. And I think, even in the principles of business being halal, to avoid gambling that can create problems. We see that gambling has been on the rise a lot in Africa. So gambling platforms now are everywhere. There are gambling platforms connected with sports. Okay, they create a lot of risk, and they make some people lose all their incomes, and it becomes very detrimental. So using these principles can avoid a lot of these issues. We have as well, in a lot of usage of the internet, is pornography, we know, and this is another industry that is frowned upon by our religion. And I think the world is waking up also to the usage of alcohol, and many of the new generation will tell you that they will probably see alcohol as we used to see smoking tobacco 20 years ago. Right? And the question around also finding solutions to riba is really addressing this problem, which is a problem in Islam, really also is at the forefront of some of the things that Muslim majority nations in Africa face as well, okay, among other nations. So there is a lot of reliance on debt. We're all relying on external debt. There have been one of the most contentious elements around international organization right now, like the IMF and the discussions with the African countries, is the credit rating of African countries. So there is this, what we call global financial cycle, that when overall the US economy struggles, then this will in turn make the poorer countries and some African countries as well less likely to be able to repay their debt.
Yes.
This leads to the credit agencies, the credit rating agencies downgrading the debt of African countries, even though they might have a good history of repayment. So many of these African countries found this unfair because this global financial cycle is not under their own responsibility, but it's a reality that when the economy overall, the whole world struggles, they think that Africa will struggle more. Okay? So there is this realization that African countries, especially sub-Saharan African countries, cannot keep on going with paying interest north of 8-9%. And thinking of other alternative investments with the private and public partnerships based on equity is at the forefront as well of some of the principles of Islam. And also how to raise local finances. So local financing, we have modes of taxation. Islam recommends some sort of wealth tax. You have challenges of collecting that wealth tax, same as income tax, like in the developing world and in Africa as well, because you don't have income statements. But where a lot of African countries are going is strengthening property taxation, right? Because property is often investment vehicle that you can observe. It's not moving anywhere, so you can tax it. So you have a lot of reforms to increase property taxation. But to kind of wrap up the answer of this, I think I wanted to end though by saying that for this particular question, Africa has a rich history of Islam. We have had the Sokoto Caliphate. We have had a long presence of Islam in Africa since 1200s. We have had writings in Ajami script, which was this Arabic adapted to the local languages. And in these writings, you read lessons about how to raise a family. You read lessons about the Prophet ﷺ. You read lessons about economic principles. You read lessons about how to manage the court system. And so I think building on its version of Islam, its version is endogenous version of Islam, and also it is understanding and accepting version of many of the Sufi brotherhood that were there. Africa can benefit a lot from this lessons of Islam. And I wanted to give an example.
Please,
so it is the Murid brotherhood in Senegal, the Mouridia brotherhood, which is one important economic power.
Yeah.
And this Sufi brotherhood organizes and creates a lot of public spaces, mosques, hospitals, and they all farm together under their sheikh. In the summer, they go and farm, and then they collect in Touba region and Khelkom from the peanuts that is farmed, and from these they will build the city, essentially. And they create trade networks as well all around the world, not only in Senegal, but around the world, in the US, in France, and everywhere they are, where they unite, they invest back home as well. And they are all driven by their religion and their shared values, and that they make benefit their families and their country and their brotherhood in general.
Professor Abdullah Njai, I think that's been a really fascinating conversation today. I could probably go on for another hour and a half, but I think we have to pause there. So Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here in this studio in London and to have seen such a wonderful places and to have walked through places where John Maynard Keynes, Jeremy Bentham's
Embalmed
body lays, and to be in the room where Karl Marx has written Das Kapital, and to meet you first.
Barakallah feek. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Thank you. Alaikum salam.
Please
Thank you,
remember
Sister
to
Manira.
subscribe to our social media and YouTube channels and head over to our website thinkingmuslim.com to sign up to my weekly newsletter. Jazakallah khair.
Alhamdulillah.
So I think Brother Ismail Fahmy is with us. What did you guys think about his answers and his thoughts? Not only about, obviously his interest is Africa, his homeland, but some of the things that he was talking about as far as how they would reflect on us here in the United States.
I saw the disruption of the African continent as it relates to the Atlantic slave trade and how it destabilized the whole continent as well. And their struggle is parallel to our struggle, but maybe even harder than our struggle because there are so many moving components and so many countries have been affected, and they've been affected in different ways. And they have different demons, for lack of a better term, to slay. And then to make all that congruent, where they're not operating as a continent of people, is a huge, huge challenge. So I see the challenge as being huge. I think the best response he gave was the modeling of the continent on Islamic principles and keeping out those things that are harmful. But one thing he did not speak about as an Islamic principle was also being able to defend yourself.
Right.
That's an Islamic principle, and time after time, people can just come in and can't defend yourself, just wipe away everything that you're looking to establish. So those were
Yeah,
thoughts.
he kind of alluded to that the defense thing a little bit in two different ways. One way he talked about creating more of a service industry. And because the service industry, you're not going to have a pile of diamonds or truckloads of ore or anything like that. It's intellectual property basically that's driving the economy in the service industry. There's less to defend. And that's true. It doesn't mean there's nothing to defend. It just means there's less to defend. And the other statement he made was kind of curious, was when you set about to engage multiple parties, and he's talking about the practice world, the one thing you cannot do is show yourself to be adversarial. And he used Libya as an example of a country that kind of bowed its neck and stuck its chest out. And then they got invaded. And of course, we know what happened to Gaddafi. So curious in that he didn't touch on being strong defensively at all. Very, very intellectual, I thought, in his answers and his approach, though I agreed with a lot of what he had to say about, and he never used this term, but collectivism, of us coming together and agreeing to very fairly do business with each other first, and then exporting what we're doing together to the greater world, starting with our own brothers and sisters in Africa. That he was talking about Africa, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was a good point. Of course, he said, like you were saying, that all of these effects of colonialism and our mistrust of each other and these type things, it makes it a very hard carry to do that. And of course, I obviously thought of us here in the United States, of us developing these small, he talked about small and medium sized businesses, developing small and medium sized businesses in our own communities. But in many cases, our inability to scale those businesses and make them nationwide, forget them being international, but just make them nationwide competitive businesses. Because we lack a lot of the same things that those businesses in Africa lack. We lack capital investment or the formation of individuals into capital to help those businesses grow.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
think.
it
Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say it just seems like a lot of the issues are parallel. I mean, they're not exactly the same, but there are a lot of parallel issues that I see.
Yeah. Well,
And I kind of see the same some of the same solutions though. I mean, he didn't really get into it because I kind of think he didn't want to come across as too religious. He didn't really hit it hard until the end of Islamic principles in business. And obviously you got to have a little bit more control, or a little bit, you can exert a little bit more influence. It's not control, but be able to exert a little bit more influence in your communities to be able to exclude those things that are ruinous, like the gambling and the pornography and the alcohol and things of that nature. That the farther you can distance your community from those things and their influences, while at the same time you are building trust and unity and a collective spirit within your community around business and commerce and everything else, that you we could probably speed up the process on this side of the Atlantic, and I'm sure they think the same thing. He's thinking the same thing that they would be able to do on that side.
So,
Ishmael, you have any comments? Go ahead, Sister Manira. I thought he had taken himself off mute. I thought he had something to add.
then my question becomes, how can we assist each other? They have resources um, that we don't have.
Mm-hmm.
We have a I'll explain it this way, a focused know-how that they don't have, because we have, compared to them, navigated a smaller, more concentrated situation and navigated it only with the help of Allah to achieve some successes, especially when it comes to us being able to build infrastructure, having knowledge of building infrastructure, having knowledge of um, managing cities, city planning, all of these things that we have been exposed to um, in this country in a more concentrated way than they have because the
Mm-hmm.
country is so vast and you know so it seems like a great opportunity for us to partner and assist and help each other um, to achieve some common goals.
I'm in 100% agreement. And DeLacy, Mom DeLacy, with their black seed oil and the other things that they're working on, that's a perfect example of taking the bull by the horns and actually starting to do exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, and I might get the dates wrong. I don't think I will. I think I'm pretty close on the dates. December of 2023, there was a delegation from our community that went to Africa. I thought to meet with the Senegalese, maybe what is the country that just borders them? Is it Guinea? I think Guinea Bissau.
I'm
There
not
were
sure.
three. There were three countries, Senegal being one of them, that our delegation went to Africa to meet with to begin the process of establishing business relationships. And I don't know what exactly has become of that, but
Yeah,
that is
that
a
was
necessary step, right?
that was Brother David Hassan.
Yes, 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 right.
Okay.
Hmm. I don't know where that initiative is, and the type of formation that it would take. But like what DeLacy and Rabani have done in Ethiopia, that seems to be at some scale a successful partnership.
Mhm.
That seeming to me could be replicated in other things. He was talking about Cote d'Ivoire. I always said just Ivory Coast. It's easier for me. The kaka there, which basically means coffee, right? Coffee beans.
Yes.
That they're now they want to be a partnership between Ivory Coast, maybe in Senegal, so that those coffee beans don't go all the way to Europe to get processed and then sold back in a finished product where not even the people in Ivory Coast can afford to buy a cup of coffee from that
Right.
processing.
So
So,
those types of strategies, those types of strategies is what I'm talking about. How we would be of benefit
mhm,
to the processes that they're seeking to establish. You always want to put yourself in a position where, when producing, your family can benefit first.
exactly.
So just the thinking process of how to structure it from the beginning, um, and we were forced into thinking that way because of segregation.
Hmm.
We had to think of how can we have our own schools, our own veterinarians, our own universities, our own banks. We had to think that way because we weren't allowed to integrate, or uh, we were thrust into that womb. We were thrust into that pressure. And it produced a specific way of thinking for our people of self reliance and necessity being the mother of invention.
Hmm.
Uh, so that in itself, um, and when they saw how that was benefiting us, they rethought segregation immediately and came up with integration as a saving force for us. Uh, but it definitely was not, you know, it really usurped and began to take that pressure off. And, um, you know, life got easier, but at the same time, our sharpness, our focus, our clarity, our ingenuity was diluted, you know. So, uh, what we have, what remains, um, could still be an asset. I don't see where this really has happened on the African continent, where that type of pressure has been placed on the people as a whole to create those types of thinking processes. So I'll stop there.
No, I mean, that's what you say is true. It's just try doing it as an individual or small group. So, like in Rabbani's case, and I don't know how many years Rabbani had been traveling to Africa and to the Middle East and relationships that he had built, but the average brother or sister from the United States just flying into Ethiopia, into Addis Ababa, and coming in there and going even to a government office and say, I'm interested in forming partnerships with your local growers to extract oil from the black bean and sell it in the United States, of how much runaround you would get and how long it would take you to create any kind of a foothold to do business in that country. Find, like he was even saying, people that you can trust, people that when you fly back home are not just simply going to do ridiculous things and there's no accounting for what they
Right.
do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've always in those cases, I've always thought that it would be much better to do it um, as a group, establishing your own entity with some type of shared risk. Like if we raise $50,000 from 50 people to form an organization to invest in a coffee processing facility in Ivory Coast, to bag coffee and sell it worldwide and start a process like that, that you probably, and number one, you could probably decide that somebody within your group is going to stay in country and oversee the operation.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have somebody from here to stay and be a part of the operation. Probably have a revolving door where somebody's there for a year to 18 months and then replaced by someone to get any kind of growth or scale, to make sure that operations run properly, things like that. I think that people on the African continent, especially Muslims, would be receptive to that.
And you said a key word there because I was thinking that the first thing you have to do is connect with someone with shared values,
Exactly.
and other Muslims who you understand their values, and we stand on the same foundation. Uh, would be the starting point for
Mm-hmm.
that. If you're looking to offset mistrust and corruption and things of that, and also recognizing it's choosing a mate, basically. You know
Right.
what has your track record been in business, and how reliable, what is your reputation, how reliable is that? Those things can be checked as well.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's going to come down to those shared values, um,
Right.
and at the foundation of it. So I think that that would be an excellent thing, um, and an excellent starting point. And at that on that level, you would have multiple avenues of entry and communication, um, to help with that, because you're going to be connected with a masjid or a mosque and imams, and there'll be shura. So you'll have multiple avenues of communication and reference to start to develop a relationship with um, with someone over there. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that would be great. And um, I know that Brother Rabani has brought coffee back. Um, I have sampled that coffee from Ethiopia, and
Okay.
yeah. So the I'm not sure of how, whether it was traced or whether it was processed in Ethiopia or not. I just knew the processed coffee that I got he brought back from Ethiopia, um, but I don't know the route or the routing of the
Mm-hmm.
process for the coffee. So it's a lot to be considered. And
It's a
then
lot. Yeah.
how are all these tariffs going to affect that process? It's like they see us coming, right? You
Well,
know,
there is information available though on the cost of processing a ton of coffee, equipment costs for actually setting up a grinding operation. That information's out there. I mean, so the only people who have the wool pulled over their eyes on some of the basic things of the business are people who want the wool pulled over their eyes. Or they're just not knowledgeable enough to know that before you even start peanut farming on your own land, that there's some things that you need to know so that people don't take advantage of you. So
yeah,
that information can be had. The information, like DeLacy was talking maybe a couple of weeks ago about the process of even getting the black seed oil back into the United States, that he's using like a bonded courier warehousing, gets it all through customs, a customs broker is basically what he said, to handle all that for him. Well, that also protects your money, right? Like
yeah,
the customs broker is never going to let your money go until the product itself has been certified. Those
mm,
two things meet, you have your product, and whoever sent you the product has their money simultaneously, basically.
yes,
So there are things that can be put in place as protections against ruin or or really serious loss, that also, to people who want to take the time and do it right, that you can alleviate some of these fears, and it gives you, just my judgment, it gives you more energy to push forward even faster.
yes. And knowing the expectations of your consumers
Mm-hmm.
as well. One thing that when I did see the coffee, I noticed that there were variations of the color of the coffee. Um, and that's something we're not used to.
Right.
And
Very much right.
yeah,
Assalamu
and
alaikum. Can I be
Walaikum
heard?
salam, brother.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. It might be my Bluetooth. Yes, I agree. I'm listening. Yeah, we're used to some type of consistency, so
Right.
yeah,
we will have to we will either have to adjust it to have that same consistency or something. So I
Mm-hmm.
agree.
alhamdulillah.
But
Yeah.
I've been listening and going back just as far as our approach. I always think about the bee and how the bee approaches what they do for I guess for the whole for everyone. And when the Quran talks about the bee, it talks about everything except for their defense. It doesn't talk about the defense in the Quran, but it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking that's our approach. That he was saying how Libya went kind of they went kind of too gun ho. I think that should be the approach that we do have a defense, but it's not talked about, but it's there.
Right.
And you know when the bee is very particular when it uses its defense because it dies once it uses it. So we have to approach it that way. So those are my quick thoughts on it.
Okay. What did you think about the idea? And you were aware of the delegation that went to Africa, right? Back in
Yes.
2023.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So, as I was saying, I don't know what's become of that. But one of the things that I'm really keen on, and I think we probably have some young people that are very intelligent who'd be more than willing to do that, is that if we were to invest, and I mean serious investment, I'm not talking about buying 1,000 dresses or something or shoes to sell. I'm talking about serious long-term investment with manufacturing or agricultural growing or something of that nature, processing, is that we have people on the ground in Africa who are overseeing our interests. They live there, they're housed there, obviously they're compensated for being there, but they help in managing, and also in many cases I think that our methodologies, what we've learned, as Sister Manira was saying, what we've learned out of necessity in the United States,
Uh-huh.
of being able to pass some of that on to them on the ground there, you know, of just even how you problem solve.
Right. Right. I could understand that. I'm not sure how it would work in their environment, but inshallah it'll translate.
Well, if you're bringing capital, their environment is now your environment. Y'all
Right.
y'all are sharing. We share in the same environment,
That's true.
and the idea is to maximize your knowledge of your country and its resources, and what we might bring in intellectual development for what we've gone through on this side of the Atlantic, and maybe even the educational processes that we've gone through to run things in a manner that's more efficient, because France is not there to change our diaper every day, is that we've
Right.
had to hustle and do a lot of things on our own. So I actually think there would be a good mix, really and truly, if it's approached in the right way. He made that example of, okay, so you can exchange the French flag, and now you're just gonna put up the Russian flag,
Right. Right.
you know, and that's I feel the same way. So you're gonna get rid of the French, but you invite the Russians in. Like, they're not gonna try to dominate you too. So one of the things that we as African Americans, when we're dealing with Africans, and sometimes when they're dealing with us, is that idea of superiority. that has to go away
You're right on both sides. Right.
on
I
both
agree.
sides, on both sides,
I agree.
right? And
Yeah.
as Manira said, maybe with the initial inroads being with Muslims, and especially Muslims that kind of feel the same way we do, that we're kind of standing on the same ground,
Mm-hmm.
probably be an easier beginning.
Right, because we have some foundation to work
Right.
on, work together with. So I agree.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, it was very academic, but I was really interested. I thought he tried to, in his English, you could tell that he grew up French and speaking, Senegalese, French, and tribal dialect.
Right.
That he had to search for some English words from time to time. But I actually thought he was pretty good. I thought the young brother did a good job of explaining the situation.
Yeah, I think so too. And my biggest thing, this is big. They've been talking about Africa, becoming independent, and it's for people like us, but it's also for the people that are trying to figure out how to sabotage it again. They're like, okay, they're advertising
Exactly.
this, so
Yep.
they're giving them a blueprint. Like, hey, y'all better think of something because they're trying to go up on their own. So yeah, it's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's,
That
it's
even if we could partner where we can produce processing plants here,
right.
afford
Yeah.
them a bigger share
Yep.
of the
Right. Yep.
profits.
Or
Yep.
more just share.
Quality, we can build business here, create jobs here, and uh, give them a bigger profit margin where they can afford that cup of coffee when the product gets back to them as well. And then we do all the quality assurance and get everything on track. And then we can duplicate that same facility in their country.
Exactly. That's ideal, and hopefully we have that trust where
Mhm.
we're not exploiting them, and then we're
Well, I mean,
had a protection of our U.S. On top of it.
right.
So
Well, I mean, Brother Ishmael, if we know what the world market is and how the world market is treating them and their exports, we're probably going to be able to go in and make a deal with them that's going to make their eyes light up.
right back to they talk
Because I
about
mean,
in Islam it's the profit loss on both sides. So even just
mhm,
coming with that concept is sure way better than
exactly,
anything they have. So
exactly. Yep. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of food for thought, and I kind of wanted to listen to someone like him again because he is an academic, yes, and sometimes academics just talk about theories because they're not really hands on with what's going on. But I actually thought he had some good points. The other thing is that he's not political. So there was no chest pounding about what we're going to do. And I love Brother Ibrahim Traore. I love what he's trying to do in Burkina Faso, but he has to do chest pounding. There's no way around it for him. As a leader who took over in a coup, he has to be very forceful in what he says to keep the people.
Yeah.
Someone like this young man can simply talk about principles and theories and paths forward. He has there's no risk to him, and I think that sometimes you have to hear that as well.
It was interesting to me that when the interviewer asked him about singling out a city or a country that uh, had the most progress, or that was the most progressive, or that had figured it all out, he did not answer that question directly. And at
Right.
first, I'm thinking, is there not one single city or country in Africa that he could point to? But instead, he he went the roundabout way of talking about the values of the people, uh, and the processes there, and how what was the percentage? 75% of the continent is 35 and under,
That is
and
correct.
and things of that nature. And so I don't know if that was to throw them off, so people wouldn't just go and attack the best country.
That's a good point, right?
He didn't mention it. I'm like, come on, bro, give me one country, give me something. But he didn't answer that directly. So maybe that's for the best. Maybe, you know.
So with France, are they totally out, or they still have to pay France? I'm not sure about that whole situation.
So, so you're not allowed in international law to simply make a decision that you're not going to pay your debts.
Uh-huh.
So, you see a lot of tropes around that, oh, so and so, this country just canceled all their debt with France, or they just canceled all their debt with Germany. No, that didn't happen. So what you can always do is you can always renegotiate,
Right.
or you can always create different payment schedule, or you can always basically simply say, we're going to pay you what we can. When there's more, we'll pay you more, but we need to do some things to stabilize our own country. And by the way, I want you out by Monday,
Right. Right.
right?
I got you. So
And
that's
so that's kind of what's happening. Because if you just tell France or tell the World Bank or tell the International Monetary Fund or whoever, look, forget it, we're not paying you another dime. Well, the rest of the world simply doesn't do business with you.
right. Right.
I mean, they don't ship you anything. They will pay you 50 cents on the dollar from the stuff they're buying from you. I mean, just think it just between me and you owe me $20 and you just get in my face and tell me you're not going to pay me. But tomorrow you want to sell me a dozen eggs because you need some money to get gas to put in your car.
Right.
And you want to sell me the dozen eggs. I've been giving you $4 for them. You think I'm giving you $4 for the dozen eggs?
Give you
I'm gonna
one or
give
two
you
dollars.
one or
Right.
$2.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I got
Right.
you.
So everybody needs to just, hit pause and just think through the issue. I'm on the African country side. They've been abused. Just like
Yeah.
Haiti's been abused here in the Caribbean. I mean, just abused. The debt should have been long. Haiti's debt, for example, should have been paid off 130 years ago or whatever. I mean, a
Right.
long time ago, man. Their debt should have been paid off, but it's like they pay $100 and they get credited with a $5 payment.
And these are the things that the damage that these countries have inflicted on the countries that they invaded, or none of that is taken into account. That you owe us reparations, you owe us for the destructions of our civilizations, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
everything. And is that even taken into account with the debt, all the lives lost, and all the loss of their own economy, of their own ability um, to be over themselves? All that lost time equals at some point can be calculated into revenue lost. So how is that even a part of their conversation when looking at paying back those debts?
Every blue moon, some European political leader will make a speech about just that reparations. I actually even think sometime in the last 5 years, Macron has made a speech about reparations. All of them knowing full well that their parliament is never going to approve it. So they just get to look good in front of the world body. But every one of those countries, well, you can go to Germany, you can go to England, you go to Belgium, obviously you can go to France, Portugal, on and on and on. You know, all of them, Italy, if you're thinking about Eastern Africa, all of them have taken advantage of the African continent. And all of them, when pressed, will, look down at their feet and say, yeah, we did bad things there and we need to repair this and we need to repair that. But all of them know that the balance in their country between whether you want to call it liberals or conservatives or people with good hearts and people with cold hearts or whatever is such that they'll never pass it. They'll never have to write the check. And that's we run into the same issue here in the United States when we talk about reparations or even just common decency in governing. We have the same problem here. You have good-hearted people, you have cold-hearted people. And the scales, they teeter-totter a little bit here or there, but it's never enough in the direction of the good-hearted people to tilt the balance for long-term goodwill and right conduct. So you have to kind of join together and make sure that people don't drive wedges between you for you to make progress as a body. You have to have enough weight to move against that gravity that just kind of is not going to let anything be resolved.
Yeah.
Well, it's been real. I'm not sure how long this show lasts, but I have to end up.
Oh, we're over. We're
Oh,
over.
yeah.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
12 minutes over, and I love it. So
Now what?
anyway,
Now you having the show Thursday? You said.
Thursday, the show should be neat. So you were there yesterday.
Uh-huh.
So it's the same group of very opinionated Muslims
Uh-huh.
talking about and discussing the tafsir of Imam W.D. Muhammad.
Now what? Now this is going to come on AM 360. What is it going to be
This is
on?
going It's going to be on AM 360 at 6 p.m. Thursday.
Our time, 6 p.m. Right?
Yeah, so you should have gotten the Zoom link information. Though I know you said you were also going to be on the other line just to make so you could redirect
Right.
people who
Right.
didn't hear. So, but yeah, we're going to be on Zoom. You should have gotten the Zoom link. I'll send it again before
What's the name of
Thursday.
What's the name of the show?
The name of the show is The Intimate Stranger, but really it's just AM 360's Zoom broadcast
Right. The
now.
same login. Yes. Okay.
Same login, just same thing that if you were going to, listen to anybody's show on AM 360. We all have the same Zoom information. So, Sister Manir, that's going to be a fun show on Thursday.
Okay, inshallah, I'll plan to attend.
Yeah, because these brothers and sisters are serious students of Imam W.D. Muhammad. So what they do, and I'm a part of the group when I can be a part of it, is they select a book from Ronald Shaheed books to, I think right now, the book is Michael Sahir's book, but I can't remember the title of it right off the top of my head. So reading the passages in that book and then doing a really deep dive, thorough discussion of it.
Science sessions, as we used to
Yeah.
talk.
with a lot of Quran and a lot of what am I trying to say? Oh, the sayings of the prophet. What are they called again? I'm drawing a blank.
The hadiths.
Hadith. A lot of
Right.
hadith. Man, you just get too much hadith thrown in there, but
Yeah.
it makes for a very interesting conversation.
So yeah, it's the book, the commentary on the selected verses of the Holy Quran. That's the one.
Okay. Okay.
And I
Yeah,
think it's only like, I think we only got like 2 or 3 pages left, so that'll be perfect
it'll be perfect.
for
Yes.
Thursday. We should be finished Tuesday, and then we can come over there Thursday. So it should be perfect, inshallah. So,
Inshallah. All
but
right.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And I'm going to close this out with Al Fatiha. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا صراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين
I mean,
آمين. Be blessed, everyone.
be blessed.